what do you believe is the biggest blind spot in how brands still define normal life in their marketing?
So I think, we call the trend the creator gamble because we think that that's essentially what it is. If you win big. If you lose, the entire exercise, the entire investment could be, largely wasteful. So the ROI is very up and down all over the place. So I think that the key to being successful is to try and de-risk your creator investment.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joanną Universał. We're here at Imagination Day 12th edition. And here with me is Adi, who actually came last year, which I'm extremely excited to be back in the same seat with Adi to talk about very interesting subject matter. He just presented on stage. So this fresh off the stage, I'm going to ask Adi some questions. Welcome, Adi. Hello.
Hi, Joanna. Good to be back.
So as you know, I'm extremely excited about your presentation. I actually just a big shout out because worked an amazing job with Adi at Forefront to do the Marketer's Toolkit for 2026. And I think it's really important for all the marketeers to really dig into the report. But actually, you were here today talking about the 5 trends. And I want to ask about that because out of the trends you explained today, which one do you think is the most urgent for marketers to act on right now, and why?
That's a really good question. I think in some ways they're all urgent. They're all sort of important. I think probably the vanishing middle in some ways is the most urgent because that's a sector that is really under stress. The middle classes are really getting hollowed out, and it's been the foundation for a lot of marketers, right? You start with the broad audience, which is typically the middle, and then you look for segmentation and you start to go upscale or budget. So the fact that the center is giving ground is particularly worrying. And it's, obviously these things don't happen in an instant. It's been happening for many years. But we've got to a point where I think brands are starting to see it in their bottom line. They're starting to recognize it. So, we found that almost 3 out of 4 marketers we surveyed said that the middle class is starting to lose meaning as a term. It doesn't actually mean anything anymore. So I think that one's particularly important. But I would say all of them are, we're looking at 2026. We think it's going to be significant across the board.
Yes. So actually on that, I just want to say that trend really shook me up. I think obviously the other ones we keep talking about, I think this one is a little bit of I think we're noticing it, but we're not speaking it out loud. And I was just thinking of an example of brands that are probably in this kind of in a pickle because one example that came to mind is for example Brown-Forman and Jack Daniels, because they have a very premium category and products, and then they have the Jack Daniels that's for the middle class, and then they have nothing that's kind of talking to the ones that are looking for that kind of discount, looking for affordability. So I was just thinking that is there do they premiumize the whole portfolio, or do they actually have to rethink where Jack Daniel's sits? Because I don't think it anymore, especially in Poland. I think we're seeing a big struggle of that. This brand, for example, is struggling to make an appeal because it is targeted at middle class. So extremely interesting. But I'll move on because there are 5 trends that, like I mentioned. So the creator marketing is booming. And I think that's the one that I've seen, especially on the strategic side, becoming a lot more called out in briefs by clients. And I just wanted to ask, because it is booming, but it's still misunderstood. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think brands keep getting wrong when working with creators, and what separates brands that actually win in this space?
So I think, we call the trend the creator gamble because we think that that's essentially what it is. If you win big. If you lose, the entire exercise, the entire investment could be, largely wasteful. So the ROI is very up and down all over the place. So I think the key to being successful is to try and de-risk your creator investment. Now, part of that, I think, is shifting money more from advertising on user-generated platforms, which is where the bulk of the money is going, and starting to actually build long-term direct relationships with creators. So partner with creators, understand what their goals are, what they're going after, and really look at the audiences. So of course, scale is important, but that can't be the only criteria. You have to think about who are they reaching, and you're better off in many cases building relationships with tens of creators, maybe even 100 creators, in order to reach the audiences that you want. And this is really important, in a way that is synergistic with your brand.
Yes.
So you can't challenge, you can't take away that authenticity of the creator. You impact that, you kill the goose that lays the golden eggs.
Exactly. I completely agree with you because, like I said, I've seen a lot of clients come back with this whole idea of, okay, everyone's on doing something with creators. We want to do something as well. But I think this is where I'm seeing briefs from clients where they have scripts and they just want basically a creator to hold up their product and smile, and that instantly loses the appeal because it doesn't feel organic or authentic to the creator. And I think also I've noticed that potentially not every industry also should be in this space. I think some industries like beauty obviously sells amazingly with creators, but I think it's just really understanding your audience, how they consume content, who do they follow, and is that product going to feel really authentic on that with that creator, or is it just going to feel, like a dress up and someone really smiling and trying to advertise?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the appeal of creators is around, as you say, organic, authentic appeal. And as a brand, you have to find a thoughtful, considered way of being able to tie into that without sort of overwhelming it. But it's still, you have to be able to find that balance where your brand is remembered at the end of the exercise as well.
Great, and I just want to move on to the milestones with the consumers' lives. So I think that space is really interesting because this is where where I'm finding, and I think we're right at the beginning of December. So next week we start off December. A lot of clients, a lot of brands are starting to, well, hopefully start planning their next year's kind of advertising strategies and campaigns. But what I've noticed is that this is potentially a huge overlook, and I think there's a copy and paste of what they've done in the last years of kind of thinking about how consumers live. And I think what you just shown on stage, and I think the different the differences in people's lives and how they live them, and what's important now, and the fact that Europe is at a crisis when it comes to having kids. Dogs, as you said, they're becoming babies. It made me smile when you talked. Adi mentioned on stage that dog spas are becoming a huge thing, and if we were a dog next year, that would be amazing. That made me really smile. So I think that's potentially a thing that marketers should really look into and think about the changes. So I just wanted to ask you, what do you believe is the biggest blind spot in how brands still define normal life in their marketing?
I think it's actually kind of a classic blind spot, is that we tend to look at the world through the lens of our own experience. And so in a lot of cases, we look at what our life is like. And if we want certain things, we just sort of assume everybody does. That's where, objective, granular market research and analysis is really important. And being aware of, shifts that are occurring. So I think in some ways, I think in more sort of liberal economies, this is less of a concern because marketers are more aware of those shifts. But I think as you move to more conservative countries and more traditional countries, there is an expectation of, husband, wife, 2 kids, house, and that is really starting to fracture. I mean, certainly people will stay, in those categories. It's not like they will completely disappear. But the scale is starting to shift now. The percentages are starting to shift. And as a brand, you have to be able to cater to these new sort of segments, these new categories that are emerging within consumers. So, I think you have to sort of really take a step back and throw away some of the assumptions that you have and challenge them and really understand what is the makeup of, because I think the average household now becomes a meaningless term. You have to sort of look at what is my category, who is buying my stuff, how much are they spending, and then who are the people doing that, and what is then the composition of that household.
Yes, and I would kind of advise clients, I think, from my perspective as a strategist, is to not just trust, not just read what you read, online. I think it's just to really understand, and lose those misconceptions and try and invest in really researching your audiences and really shadowing them, seeing how they live, how they consume, how they behave, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. Because I think this is where those nuances that you talked about on stage are going to become crucial, and also just on because I did mention dogs, but I think one of the one of the big things that I've been an advocate of is, everyone's talking about Gen Z now, alpha, but boomers have such, they have money, they have money to invest, and I think it's such a, and especially here in Poland, I've noticed that they're becoming, like almost invisible by marketeers. They don't seem like an interesting target audience, and I think that's also what you've shown on stage, is that why not tap into that audience, understand them.
That's a great point, Joanna. Glad you brought that up, because I think if you look at income distributions, and I don't know the numbers for Poland specifically, but generally speaking, this is the generation that has benefited from almost unprecedented combination of positive things. You've had, for the most, peace, geopolitical stability.
Peace, but better health, better healthcare.
Better healthcare. You've had financial markets that have, grown dramatically in their sort of prime years. House prices have rocketed in many parts of the world during their time.
True.
So, and that basic thing about education, hard work, career growth, that sort of equation that we were all told worked in their time. And it's increasingly now not working. So for new generations, it's going to be very, very hard to replicate the wealth that they've grown. But they've got it, as you said. They've got that money. And marketers, again, as you pointed out, we tend to look at sometimes senior citizens as sort of, they're retired, they're pensioners, they're living quiet lives.
Sorry to say, but they're gonna die off soon. Why invest?
And also that they don't spend. They go, they play bridge or something, and they walk their dogs, and that's their life. But that is not at all how boomers are living now.
Oh my God, completely agree with you. I mean, I wish I could be a boomer, literally, to a point where I've seen them doing cruise vacations, buying property, doing a lot of passion points that they didn't have the time earlier because they were working so much. Now they have the time to actually enjoy their life. So a brand could play a meaningful role, but it's just exactly it's brands thinking, okay, let's focus on alpha now. Like I've seen this a little bit of a rise now of alpha, let's talk about alpha, but again, no one's really zooming in on boomers.
There's a great opportunity there, I think, for marketers.
Exactly. I don't know, I think we have a little bit more time, so I'm going to ask one more question. Your report is called Clarity in Chaos. So in a single piece of, what's the single piece of clarity you think marketers need to hold on most tightly right now to?
I think brand investment. I mean, that was one of the takeaways I had for one of the themes, and it feels almost foolish putting it up because, of course, duh, But there are always questions around, should we invest in brand? Does brand matter? Does brand make a difference? There is an overwhelming emphasis now, I think, on easy metrics as well, with the rise of digital. I call them easy metrics, things like CTR, clickstream analysis, because they just come from your servers. You know what happened. And,
exactly.
But there is a danger of what we call a quantitative fallacy, where you focus on a set of numbers as representative of something, but they're not representative of that. And actually, by not investing in brand or by not prioritizing brand, you're weakening your ability to maintain your price. You're weakening your ability to differentiate in a market. And you're weakening now increasingly, based on some of the changes we talked about, your flexibility to be able to appeal very quickly to shifting segments.
I think one quick one. So if you could get every marketeer in the world to stop doing one thing tomorrow, what would it be? What would you ban them from doing? It's my fun one. I always try and sneak a fun one.
Well, I mean,
You will laugh.
I'm an inside guy. I've come up through research. So my constant sort of refrain is, don't make assumptions. Build effective research approaches.
I completely, wholeheartedly agree with Adi, and that would be very much my answer as well. Adi, thank you so much for coming to Warsaw, for speaking to me, and for attending Imagination Day. I just want to call out that the partner of this podcast is Papaya Films. And then, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.